I spent an unbelievably fascinating afternoon, Carlos, running around with Representative Rudman. Okay.
Dr. Rudman.
Dr. Rudman and his group of physicians who were in support of House Bill 1403, which, as it came out, ostensibly was the Physician Freedom of Speech and Medical Conscience Act. But on the strike all, allowed those insurance companies that wanted to opt out of coverage to do so. So as the bill was originally written, I was kind of supportive of it, but when it ultimately came out, I couldn't voice support for it. But who's not for free speech and medical conscience? All right, great. Hey,
Good
welcome to the
morning.
green room.
Happy 420. Woo!
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And what
420.
And what better guest to have on
Yeah,
420? And I mean it, because this is one of the original cannabis OGs in the state of Florida. We'll talk about Carlos. Because listen, you introduced the legal adult use bill, what, 4 years ago in the House. Of course, never gets committee.
That's right.
Anyway, but we're so thrilled to have former state representative Carlos Guillermo Smith now running for Florida Senate, right?
Yes, that's right.
My point is, Carlos, we need you. We need you so bad.
Thank you, Dr. Barry.
And we do. And I wanted to make sure that you had a platform today to make sure that you could announce your candidacy for Senate to the cannabis community, because we know how important it's going to be coming up as we go forward here in Florida. But there's so many other important things to talk about, much more so than cannabis.
I mean, the rights of people are being stripped left and right. So well, let's give Carlos a platform, because I just go, because you have
welcome to our dear friend Carlos Guillermo Smith. Thank you for joining us. I've been chasing you for weeks.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here in the green room, and happy 420, everyone. I am Carlos Guillermo Smith. Many of you may know me because I used to serve in the Florida House of Representatives. I served for 6 years in Florida House District 49, which is the East Orange County side of the Florida House of Representatives. I was elected in 2016, left the legislature in 2022, and now I have just recently announced that I'm running for Florida Senate to represent a district in Central Florida, District 17. And when I was in the Florida legislature, just want to kind of take us back to what that time was. In 2016.
We have a lot of listeners that are outside Florida too. So we have a lot
from
Massachusetts, a lot from Illinois. I know a lot. So perfect.
Well, when I was first elected to the state house in 2016 in Florida, I ran on a campaign of making sure that we expand access to cannabis and that we decriminalize cannabis. I was definitely already out there for full legalization, but I knew what I was getting into in Florida. This was during a time that we didn't even have medical cannabis yet as the law of the land in 2016. So when it was finally approved by voters and it was beginning to be implemented by the Florida legislature, it was really, really important to have champions who were serving in the legislature to make sure that the will of the voters was properly implemented. It was not, as we know, when that law was passed. I mean, while most of the headlines were focused on the fact that you couldn't have full flower or smokable flower, which finally changed thanks to lots of folks' advocacy. You know, there was a lot about the bill that did not respect the will of the voters, even for full medical cannabis. But for many years, I was an advocate within the legal system of expanding medical cannabis to make it less expensive for patients, to reduce costs for folks who, by definition, have a debilitating condition. Many of them are on Medicaid and on a limited income. And so paying out-of-pocket costs for medical cannabis can often be a disincentive from doing it in the legal process rather than out in the illicit market. But, you know, certainly while that program has made incremental improvements, there's a lot of improvements that can be done. We just saw a hemp bill just passed that from the House that finally had some objections from the hemp industry that were addressed and removed. And we have a ballot initiative in 2024 in Florida to fully legalize cannabis for responsible adult use. So in future legislatures, we're going to, again, if that bill passes, need champions in the legislature who are going to be able to advocate to make sure that the will of the voters is implemented so that the good provisions of that constitutional amendment are respected and become the law.
No, it's huge, Carlos. I tell every patient that what I know about what's going to happen in the next phase, and listen, if and truly supporting it, of course, Smart and Safe Florida, and they'll get it on the ballot and it'll pass if it gets on the ballot. But then we know it's got to go to Tallahassee. It literally states in the bill that it must go to Tallahassee for implementation. Wasn't there supposed to be a high-speed rail down the middle of I-4? Wasn't there supposed to be solar panels on the top of every roof in Florida? My point is, and I'm an Ohioan, so I don't know these things because it predates me here, but we need champions that as the implementation comes through. There's two things I know. One is that it's going to be heavily taxed at the legal adult use level. Of course, everybody knows that, and it should be, similar to alcohol, but it's the regulatory side that's going to be so interesting. How much will the citizen of Florida be able to purchase, right?
There's a lot of
legal,
work to
there
do.
is,
There's
and it can be very, and I remind everybody, it's not like it's going to be an unregulated system. So it is the implementation, as you know, that the devil is in the details.
That's right. We push for as much as we want. And once we get an outcome and the voters have had their say, we will continue to push to make sure that the good provisions are fully implemented. For example, I have always been a very, very strong advocate for home grow. I think home grow should be allowed to be an option, whether you live in the state of Florida or whether you live in another state, which is why it's important that we pass federal legislation. What I also know is that this is the ballot initiative that we have, and while it doesn't include everything that I want, which includes the ability for home grow, I think that it will expand opportunities, it'll create more jobs, and it'll bring billions of dollars into the state of Florida, and finally bring us to a place where folks are not being incarcerated or charged with possession crimes in the state of Florida because of the fact that they have cannabis on their person.
No, there's so many issues that go along with legal adult use. It's job protections. It's the utilization in hospitals and nursing homes and assisted living centers, and so many others, expungements, of course, making sure there's minority, participation, and equity.
That has been critical. Minority participation and equity is so critical.
Listen, can we talk about DEI?
Let's talk about equity first.
Diversity.
Is that a bad word?
Equity and inclusion, Carlos, which I'm just going to open up the floor for you. Give me your impression about where we're at in Florida. Give us inspiration about what we need to do to make sure that, listen, I want to someday say that I'm a proud Floridian.
We need to vote. Vote loud and clear.
What is going on in Florida? How can we stop this level of hate, quite frankly, that we see in the state?
And spewed by our representatives. We heard some blatant.
I walked into Ruta's office, Carlos, carrying my phone with and I need to give them, the Representative Barnaby, okay, even to put representative in front of his name, calling, okay, citizens of Florida imps and demons, okay, isn't that hate speech?
It is hate speech.
And I walked into Ruta's office and I said, how can we stop this? What do we?
Awful.
Save me, Carlos.
It was extremely hateful, and what is still so appalling about a Republican state representative who, in reaction to a bill that makes it a crime for transgender people in Florida to use public restrooms, because that is the hateful space that the legislature has brought itself to, that surprise, it inspired hate speech from one of their own members who called transgender people mutants, devils, and imps. And after he did so, faced no consequences, and his language was not condemned. None.
No censure.
His consequences and his language was not condemned by the Republican House Speaker Paul Renner, or really any of his other Republican colleagues. they just apparently let that slide. And I think that it's important that words matter, that this type of hate language can be weaponized against marginalized communities who increasingly become targets of hatred and violence, especially in a state where we have easy access to weapons. We are now in a permitless carry state where folks can carry firearms secretly in public without a license or training or criminal background check. But we're talking about DEI because I think it's an important segue into this conversation about valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just for the record, let's just acknowledge that every single Fortune 100 company in the United States, every single Fortune 100 company has a diversity, equity, and inclusion program or initiative. Why do these successful businesses have it? Because they understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion not only helps them grow their business because they have better talent within their organization, but it also helps them with their bottom line because they're reaching out to more diverse markets. They are expanding their businesses based on a diverse set of experiences that is not not, you know, one type of background or one type of person. Diversity yields creativity and success. Now, when we talk about equity, which is not a dirty word, I think it's really, really important to use the most obvious example, like, for example, the cannabis industry in Florida, where we don't have equity. What does that mean? Well, we don't have equity because we have a system that is set up where we have no minority communities, people of color, Black folks, Latino folks who have been disproportionately impacted by the criminalization of marijuana over generations. None of them are part of the medical cannabis industry or hold a medical cannabis license to be able to have a business here. That is inequitable. That is not equity. And by the way, when we talk about merit, they are not unable to enter the industry because they are not capable or not competent. It is because they are facing a system and an institution where the odds are stacked against them, where the cost to doing business, like let's just say the $5 million or more in fees and licensing fees that they have to pay to the state even to apply or be considered, is an astronomical cost that disproportionately impacts people of color more, and it keeps them out of the market. So we have no equity. So equity is really important.
Carlos, cost and connections, right? And that those minority communities don't have the connections. As we know, the original license holders, you know, many of them had deep connections.
And so diversity, equity, and inclusion is really, really important. But what Republicans have done in this political environment in Florida is they have turned diversity, equity, and inclusion into a dirty word. And that is not just me, you know, spewing hyperbole here on the 420 show in the green room. That is what Governor Ron DeSantis has said over and over and over in public press conferences, where he has disparaged diversity, equity, and inclusion, where he has accused not only businesses, but he has accused our higher education system in Florida, our state universities and our state colleges, of indoctrinating students because they dare focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as fundamental goals and values that they unify behind supporting that. And so what is the policy result been? We are now in a legislative session. We're facing legislation, specifically in the House now, that was heard yesterday, that bans diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the state university and state college system. They are prohibited from being funded by state dollars or federal dollars, which would effectively wipe them away from existence.
That's bizarre.
Well, it's crazy.
Why?
I was at Tiger Bay 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and it was a panel discussion about
New College, and thank you, Carlos, for being here. I know you were at a New College rally a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Listening to what the professors were saying of what's down the pike as far as what they're going to be able to teach and not teach, and what courses and what course language can be used. I mean, it's insanity.
It is insanity. So is it fear, Carlos? Is it ignorance? Is it the pursuit of power? Is it all of it? I mean, why in a 6-week, let's talk 6-week abortion ban as well. As you know, I'm an emergency physician by training, and I'm going into the grave as emergency physician. Emergency physician in me wants to stand up and say, and others have, and will continue to, women will die. Okay. Women will be harmed. Socioeconomically, it's going to impact the rich. Woman will always find a way. Okay, they will. And listen, rusty coat hanger abortions will begin to reappear in the United States. And it's going to be worse than rusty coat hangers, because if you go on the internet and you look at these methods of women, the things that women may try. Well,
not just that, but look what's up at the SCOTUS today. Supreme Court is ruling on the abortion pill, which now is almost represents 50% of what women go to.
Pursuit of power. I mean, what motivates these to believe that their way is the only way? I'll tell you, Representative Skidmore, I want to give a big shout out to. And listen, everybody, if you want to get a migraine headache every day, develop a peptic ulcer over a 2-month period of time, load the Florida channel on your phone, on your computer. You can watch these debates.
Just have a basket close by, because you may want to
and Carlos knows through the years I've watched the debates, have texted him while session has gone on with tears coming down your eyes and mine as well, as I've watched. But Representative Skidmore, I think, said it best. You raise your family how you want, but stay out of mine.
Exactly.
And I thought another telling comment was the distrust of a woman to be able to make that choice, what's best for herself, for her family, with her family, her doctor, and her faith within her to make that decision.
Well, I just
That's
think
right.
Humanizing humans. I mean, point blank, they're dehumanizing women. They're dehumanizing anybody's in the LGBTQ community. They're just dehumanizing people. We all are human. We all have our rights. We're all the same. And if they're spouting religious, God created everybody. That's it. Done.
Well, to hide behind the veil of religion is so utterly insulting.
It is.
But Carlos, in your opinion, where are we with these people? How can we? I don't think we'll ever change them, quite frankly. We just need to have more of us.
Well, I think unfortunately people are waking up to the extreme policies that are coming out of Tallahassee. I think people are shocked because last session, let's just kind of back up for a minute. Last legislative session in 2022, before the November elections, a 15-week abortion ban was passed into law. And we went in 1 year from a 15-week abortion ban to a 6-week abortion ban, a near total abortion ban. And of course, we talk about this as a near total abortion ban because most women only find out they're pregnant after 6 weeks of pregnancy.
Especially young women with irregular periods and older women with irregular periods. That's what people forget about. You're irregular when you're younger.
It's forced pregnancy. It's forced pregnancy because this as horrific as this is to wrap your brain around. Florida will soon be a state, and the passage of the 6-week abortion ban, by the way, is predicated on a pending decision from the Florida Supreme Court. The Florida Supreme Court is taking up a challenge to Florida's constitutional right to privacy. Florida's constitutional right to privacy has traditionally and historically been interpreted by the courts to also protect the right to abortion access. We have a new Florida Supreme Court, and this new Florida Supreme Court that may have different ideas, they are reviewing a challenge to the privacy protections in the Florida Constitution. And assuming, which we believe to be true, assuming that they will strike down those protections, the 6-week ban will immediately become law. And when women discover they are pregnant, even if it's an unintended pregnancy at 6 weeks, at 6 weeks or 7 weeks, the government of the state of Florida will require them to carry their pregnancy to term, even if it is against their will. Now, just like all of these culture wars, this 6-week abortion ban is also a class war. It's a class war because those women who will be most deeply impacted are women living in poverty, women of color, women who don't have the means to leave the state of Florida if they need access to abortion, to go to another state where they can get an abortion.
Oh, they'll try to outlaw that too, Carlos. They'll go after that. They'll go after that next.
But what amazes me, like, okay, so you're forcing women to carry to term. Who's going to care for these children? Like you said, the majority will probably be the ones that are living in poverty or lower income. Either they're going to put a strain
they won't have options.
What are their options? Yeah, where are they going to go? I mean, this is crazy. And it's not like you see a lot of people wanting massive adoptions of children that are born with deformities or children that are born unhealthy. Like they just don't have any foresight. And it's like you're forcing these women to carry.
But it's also the time. It's tying the hands of the doctors to deliver the legitimate
women's
lives.
And we don't have social services in the state of Florida.
We don't have
social services are very poor.
Problem.
Even if you just talk about just access to health insurance, for example, starting April 1st, up to 1 million Floridians will begin being disenrolled from Medicaid coverage and will lose their health insurance because the state of Florida refuses to expand social services, to expand Medicaid and include access to healthcare coverage for people who are living in poverty. The social services are just not there. So it is important to acknowledge the reality, which is that oftentimes women who find themselves in an unintended pregnancy, they have to make the decision that's best for themselves and their family and their economic situation. Absolutely. That is just reality. And for those who just can't understand that these are decisions that practical decisions that people have to make. Like, for example, I can't afford to have another baby right now. Many women who get abortions have several children and just cannot, it is not the right time for them to proceed with their pregnancy to then add to their family. So these are personal decisions, but the culture wars are also class wars, and the class wars are not limited to abortion. No. Yesterday, the Florida House of Representatives passed a bill that imposes a complete and total ban on access to life-saving healthcare for transgender youth and effectively cuts off access for transgender adults to healthcare because it prohibits private insurance companies from offering life-saving care for transgender individuals as part of their gender-affirming care package. So again, this is about the haves and the have-nots. It's bigoted and it's hateful, but those families, let's say if you have a son or daughter who's trans and you support them, you affirm them, they are currently enrolled in prescribed care in consultation with their doctor and with their parents. For those families that have means to leave the state of Florida,
and they will
save the life of their transgender child who's just been forcibly detransitioned off of prescribed care by the state government, then you may be able to do that. That's a difficult decision. I just want to point out there are families in the state of Florida who have already left or who are making plans to leave because they have a transgender child in their family who is about to be cut off from life-saving care by force by the state of Florida. And they are pulling their kids out of school and leaving their jobs, selling their homes and fleeing the state of Florida to go somewhere else in the United States to save their child.
Yeah.
And those who are doing that are doing it not only out of necessity and out of the love for their child, who they want to protect from this state government, but also because they can. For those who cannot,
What do you do? You're gonna lose
which
your
does
job.
not sound like an easy option. Yeah, I'm going to pull my kids out of school tomorrow, quit my job, and move to another state.
Yeah, so easily done.
Yeah,
Who
sure.
can do that?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. With any.
So what options do
It's
they
brutal.
have?
It's brutal. I don't get it. Once again, Carlos, ignorance, hate, pursuit of power, fear, all of it. I mean, what motivates those that can't accept the fact of how difficult 2023 is for all of us, and who doesn't want to give the leg up?
If I could boil it down to one word,
Please.
it's about control. Control. The 6-week near total abortion ban is about controlling women. The attacks on LGBTQ people, on trans youth and trans adults, they don't believe that transgender people exist, and they want to control their visibility in public by pushing them back into the shadows and into the closet. They don't like the fact that Florida is allegedly a free state where parents can decide whether they want to take their teenagers to a drag show. They don't like that. And so they're passing laws to control those parents and tell them that they cannot bring their families to a family-friendly drag show. The list of examples goes on and on, but Dr. Barry, at the end of the day, it's about control.
Can we take it back, Carlos? How do we take it back? Give us the inspiration today. Give us a game plan for the future. Are we so gerrymandered in this state at this point? Is it going to take one election?
We have to be ready. I think we have to get first. It begins with a mindset, and this is kind of the tough talk, like the real talk. Some of the damage that has been inflicted in the state of Florida over the past couple of years is not and cannot be undone overnight. Yeah. It is very, very important for folks to understand that they need to get engaged in the fight to protect perhaps the fundamental freedoms that they took for granted, and that it is a long-term fight that we may not see immediate and overnight results. Voting in elections is absolutely critical. That's the bare minimum. But we have to understand that even one election is not going to completely turn this around. Take Roe v. Wade as an example. When Roe v. Wade was struck down, and people's minds were blown that a generation, it took a generation to have these constitutional rights become the law of the land, that suddenly overnight those rights were gone. They vanished. And we had to understand that those rights were not coming back overnight because they took a generation to get them installed in the first place. And so that doesn't mean it'll take 50 years to win back abortion rights, but it's going to take a sustained effort and commitment to defending our civil rights and our freedoms and being engaged in that struggle and not taking it for granted, and voting for people on the ballot, whether it be the top of the ticket president of the United States or all the way down to state senator, state representative, county commissioner, or school board member, who are going to defend those values and defend those freedoms. I'm running for state senate because I believe that state government should be prioritizing solving real problems in the state of Florida. We have a housing affordability crisis that needs to be addressed, property insurance that is going through the roof. We have tens of thousands of renters in the state of Florida who are being evicted as rent continues to soar and go through the roof. We have millions without healthcare. We have a teacher shortage in our public schools that is made worse by a legislature that has obsessed over culture wars. And there are ways that we can solve these problems. But the other reason I'm running for state senate is to give people hope that they can elect people, even in the state of Florida, as bad as it is right now, that you can elect people in the state of Florida who give a damn and who will fight for the people and what's right.
Well, we know that, Carlos. And that's why when I met you early in listen, I gave my first speech in the cannabis world in Orlando. With
I remember.
Carlos. Yeah, I know. It's still one of my favorites. And, you've always been
2017.
That's right. And you've always been an inspiration, Carlos. And that's one thing that we know is that when we get you back in the Senate,
Right.
and please, before we get off, make sure you give us our site and where we can donate, and let's get involved.
CarlosGuillermosmith.com is where you can make a donation to our campaign.
Yay.
Awesome. And what we know is that you will be up there pushing for all these, progressive issues. And you're right.
It's not even progressive issues.
They're not. They're just normal human rights.
Human issues.
I know.
Progressive. We're just talking basic human rights.
It's true. But your willingness to go back into the swamp, so to speak, I think also is fascinating. And, there's a lot of other things I know you could be doing. And listen, I know you're mentoring people up.
Someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. And I know you're mentoring, people as well, Carlos. And I know it gives you a, warm feeling to know that Anna, of course, Escamani is up there, carrying on the mission, and others, that you've inspired through the years. And I'm sure there'll be more, including ourselves. So thank you so much for being with us. I mean, it's always such an honor. And,
Thank you.
hopefully as we go over, the next year and a half, it's a long campaign. So you're getting in early.
Yes. So go to CarlosGuillermosmith.com. We've had almost 400 people in the last 12 days have contributed to our campaign. And I'm just so tremendously grateful. It's folks from all over the state, not just Orlando, Central Florida, folks from Southwest Florida, from Sarasota, from South Florida, from Tampa, from Jacksonville. They know that we're going to fight for what's right, that we are going to be a champion for the people, which will benefit everyone, not just folks in Orange County. So CarlosGuillermosmith.com, every bit helps. I need some coins. Help me out.
It gives you the platform, Carlos, quite frankly, that you deserve to have and that we need you to have. So glad to see you. And I know you'll be vocal, as we go.
That's right.
So anything that I can do, of course, to assist in any of the missions, where to find us, and we'll make sure that we reconnect with you soon in the green room as we go forward.
Thank you, Ruta. Thank you, Dr. Barry. It's just so great to be here again. Thank you. Happy 420.
Happy 420.
Thanks,